Good morning, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever this video is going to be seen. Hey, I just want to show you real quick how I'm using Cypress to automate my minimum payment calculation. Bear with me because these tests aren't going to be perfect, but I'm of the theory that tests don't need to be 100% written in the best way because they're tests. They're not going to prod, and I don't see any reason to dry them up. And you can do that later. We're kind of doing this in an agile method, so my peers, be patient with me. I'm showing you my warts and all, and what I might show you, the code might change tomorrow. It might be entirely different as we learn new things. But what do they say about what do they say about perfection is the enemy of process? Anyway, let's just get into it. And so my goal, and I'm doing this on localhost, so you won't see this in prod yet, but I'll push it to prod on Saturday. Anyway, one of my goals is to write a very simple calculator to kind of show my Angular skills and what I'm capable of doing. And I want to help people learn about their credit card balance. And so we won't go into all the details, but we're going to focus on this little spot right here. This is the little uh, Angular card that I've added, NG material card, I should say. And I want to show you how your minimum payment is calculated. And so basically, if you have $20,000 worth of debt and you have 15.13% interest, and your minimum payment is calculated by your interest plus 1% of your balance, your first minimum payment is going to be $452. Now, there's a lot of numbers on here, and I'm not going to talk about all this app does. I'm just talking about how I'm testing one section. And so I've got this minimum. I'm showing you how they calculate it, and this is probably going to change. But I'm saying, hey, this is how we calculated that $452. So we took 1.261% interest for the month. That's the 15% interest divided by 12, which ends up being $252. And I'm going to just be rounding numbers here, or flooring numbers in this case. And it takes 1% of your balance, and it's going to be $200. And they add those together, and that's how they come up with your um, minimum payment for a $20,000 balance. Now, if you change this to 10,000, obviously that number would change, right? And if you change this to 10%, obviously this number would change. And if you change how they calculate your balance, let's say they changed it to 2% of your balance, you would only get $200, and they wouldn't technically include your interest in the payment, even though your interest is in this payment. Now, there's a lot of things I have to test here. I have to test that what happens when you change this. What happens if you change this? If you put this back to interest plus 1% of balance, that number should come back. If as you tab off a thing, things should change. Now, I could manually test that, but I'm lazy. I'm a lazy developer. I don't want to manually test that. I'm going to manually test it, and every time someone makes a change, I got to make all those permutations of a test. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use some automation. So what I've done is I've wrote this test in Cypress, and so what I kind of do is I like to keep my tests minimal to a small section. So this is not testing that whole page. This is only testing that minimum payment calculation. And I have a lot of other tests, and we'll get into that another day, but I want to keep this video short. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, let's visit that website. So we're going to visit that route, Credit Card Devil. And just off baseline, there should be no minimum payment calculation. And so I say, hey, go get that data test ID. And I wrote my own helper function to do this. And I say, go get the min pay calculation component. It should not exist. That's really ID, a data test ID on that Angular material card. It should not exist. So basically what it's saying is, let's just actually bring up the website. It's really saying, if you just click on Credit Card Devil, it's not going to route there because it's already there. It's going to say, hey, there shouldn't be anything. That component shouldn't be there. So by default, I'm checking that shouldn't be there. So that's my first test. And then what I do is I come down and I say, okay, let's put in a $20,000 balance. So I get the data test ID for balance, and I clear it. I type $20,000 and I blur off. So I go in there, I put 20,000, I blur off. And this right here is, I kind of did dry this up. I know that I'm going to change that component. So I made a little function to test that. And so what I do is I create a minimum payment calculation test function. So let's go over to there, and you can see my tests are actually inside of there. And so what I do is I check and I say, hey, the minimum payment calculation should exist, because I just put something in that should show up on the screen. And then I say the monthly percentage rate should be correct. Now I'm probably going to change this, but right now I'm just putting correct because I'm reusing this function, and it's always not going to be the same number. You can see I'm passing in the fields here, and I'm checking the fields. So I say, hey, if I include interest, and I'm not sure if I should include a Boolean in a test, some logic, but it's working for now. We might rethink that. And so if there's include interest, I make sure that the monthly percentage rate should be correct. I make sure the monthly interest should be correct. And if not, I make it the finance charge should not exist. So I'm saying, hey, if you don't, if it's not going to calculate it based on your interest, then that finance charge should not exist. But the dummy finance charge should exist. I put a dummy row there just so the screen isn't jumping up and down. And then I make sure the title is correct. I make sure the percent of balance should be correct. I make sure the finance charges should be correct. I make sure the minimum payment should be correct. And I use this function over and over. And so I don't want to go into great details, but this is what keeps me on track. And I run this every time before I commit. I run this just to make sure I haven't broken it. I can run this local. And then I run it on prod after we've pushed to integrated or prod. And so basically what I'm saying is here, I'm putting in, this is what it should be, the title, the minimum payment calculation for 20,000. It should be this interest. It should be this monthly interest. It should be this finance charge percent. It should be this finance charge, and this is what the minimum payment should be. And as you can see, I then repeat another describe block, and I said, okay, I changed the minimum payment calculation to 4% of balance. And so I've got a function here because I got sick of doing this over and over, and I just made a function to do that because I'm not going to remember, oh, what is the data test ID, whatever it is. So I just call this function every time I want to do that. And so I say set minimum payment type, and I set it to 4% of balance with an enum. And then I just repeat that test with this function again. And so I keep doing that, and you can see that I'm just repeating it over and over, and so it will do my expects for me. And so let's just go ahead and show this. And so here's a test, and I'm just going to run it, and we should see that it's going to start doing that on the screen. So you can see it's bam, it's checking, it's checking, it's checking. And it ran all four of those complicated tests that a human might even more than four. If I had to do that, it would take me some time. I'd get lazy and wouldn't continually do the test right. And so this is how I automate my tests. And all that did was automate this one piece right here. And I have tests for everything else, but I just want to show you this small test. I have one small test for that. I don't write a big long test for a lot of different reasons. I don't want conflicts when other people are checking in. I like to keep it simple so the person can understand that this test is actually testing the minimum payment calculation. And so that's how I use Cypress. I know I went over that pretty fast. I didn't go into great detail, but the audience that I'm trying to reach understands. And I love you all, and I'll see you later. And you can check out this calculator at profitdreamer.com. If you go to profitdreamer.com, that's what's on the shirt here, Profit Dreamer. Just go to Credit Card Devil. You can also get there by just going to creditcarddevil.com, which will then route you back to the Credit Card Devil. Now, like I said before, that minimum payment calculation is not in prod yet. So if you do it, you won't see it yet. That should be right there. I'll push that this Saturday. We release every Saturday. I love you all. I'm Michael, the Profit Dreamer top. Profit Dreamer, go ahead, press towards the mark.